Hello, my dear students. Welcome you all to the first year's class. Previously, we were discussing something about unit number 12, the blanket. We paraphrased its text and then we discussed some of the most important aspects of that unit. Today, we are going to start the grammatical portion of the same unit, the blanket. आज हम उसके ग्रामर के बारे में पढ़ेंगे और उस ग्रामर में जो हमारे पास दो इम्पॉर्टेंट पॉइंट्स हैं उसके बारे में पढ़ेंगे. सो वी विल डिस्कस देम वन बाय वन. द वेरी फर्स्ट पार्ट इज अबाउट gerunds. Now what is a gerund? Gerund is actually an ing form. First of all, it is very much important for all of us to realize the most significant distinction between the gerund and progressive form. Why? Because most of the students fail to identify this difference between a gerund and a progressive form. देखें, जो हमारे स्टूडेंट्स हैं वो डिस्टिंक्शन या डिफरेंस नहीं कर पाते gerund में और प्रोग्रेसिव फॉर्म में. उसकी बुनियादी वजह ये है कि दोनों के साथ ing लगता है. And this is the confusing aspect. क्योंकि जब हम देखते हैं कि हमारे पास ing फॉर्म है, we have written an ing form, तो हमें लगता है we try to convince ourselves that it is actually a progressive form. Progressive form is actually a reference towards verbs. How many progressive forms do we have? We use is, am, are with ing form. So that those particular verbs function as verbs. On the contrary, on the opposite, iske barracks, when we use a gerund, we use the same ing form, but they function as a noun. So what is the difference now? The difference is not of a form. The form is the same. Apparently, the structure, the spelling is the same. The ing form is the same, but the function is different. So the function of a gerund is to act like a noun and the progressive form as verbs. This is the most important aspect regarding a gerund and a verb. For example, मैं आपको एक मिसाल देता हूं. If I say if you look at these two sentences, practicing yoga is my favorite activity. I love practicing mathematics. Over here, I have used two gerunds. I have used two gerunds. How? Practicing yoga is actually a reference to the activity of practicing. It means it is actually used as a name for that activity of practice. जो हमारी एक एक्टिविटी है जिसको हम प्रैक्टिस कहते हैं, उसके नाम के तौर पर यहाँ पर ये फंक्शन कर रहा है. It is not functioning as a progressive form, rather as a gerund form. For example, if I just remove this, I will write gerund. Now, it is a gerund. Why? Because gerund at the subject position. Subject position पर ये as a gerund इस्तेमाल हुआ है और यहाँ पर it is functioning like a noun. It is actually referring to that activity. It is actually referring to that activity as a name. तो ये नाम के तौर पर इस्तेमाल हुआ है. That is why it is known as practicing yoga. Second में अगर आप देखें, I love practicing mathematics. यहां पर भी ये जो है आपका this is your verb love और ये जो आपका है this is your gerund because ये इशारा है किस चीज की तरफ? The activity of practicing. तो उसकी तरफ इशारा है, लेकिन उस एक्टिविटी को परफॉर्म नहीं किया जा रहा, बल्कि एक रेफरेंस दिया जा रहा है कि जो प्रैक्टिस करने की एक्टिविटी है मैथमेटिक्स की, वो मुझे बड़ी पसंद है. सो लव इज योर वर्ब, दैट इज इंडिकेटिंग अ स्टेट, एंड प्रैक्टिसिंग इज एक्चुअली a reference towards the name of that activity. So practicing yoga is my favorite activity. I love practicing mathematics. यहां पर ये देखें, in the very first example is actually your auxiliary verb. This one is your gerund. This one is your gerund. So you have to identify this difference. अब अगर progressive में हम देखें, what happens in the progressive? In the progressive, on the contrary, what happens? If I say he is watching television, or if I say he is running on the jogging track. If you look at these two examples, number one, number two, yahan par over here we are having auxiliary verbs and we are having lexical or main verbs. If you look at the second example, we are having auxiliary helping verb and we are having principal main verb. Over here, this ing form is functioning as progressive verbs. इसका मतलब कि यहां पर जो ing form है, it is actually functioning as a verb. यहां पर जो हमारे पास ing form है, they are functioning like gerunds because their functioning criteria is different. Over here, the functioning criteria is different. Over here, it is functioning like a noun as gerunds. Over here it is functioning like a verb as progressive verbs. So you need to draw a distinction. Whenever you look at a word, even if they look the same, even if the forms are the same, अगर उनके spellings एक जैसे हैं, इसका ये हरगिज मतलब ये नहीं है कि वो जो word है वो हर sentence में वही function perform करेगा. For example, मैं कहता हूँ practice makes a man perfect. So practice आपका क्या है यहाँ पर? It's a noun. मैं कहता हूँ I love to practice mathematics. So function shifts. The category shifts. It is not about the form. It is about the function of a word. If you look at parts of speech, what is parts of speech? Parts of speech is actually the division based on the words classification. Now, what is word classification? Words have been categorized and classified according to the function they fulfill in a sentence. Noun has a different function, verb has a different function, adverb, adjectives, they have a different function, prepositions, conjunctions, they have a different criteria to follow. So, इन तमाम parts of speech को जब आप देखते हैं तो आपको इस बात का अंदाजा होता है कि वो कौन सा function perform कर रहे हैं. अगर के वो function noun का perform कर रहे हैं, so they are nouns. Regardless of the structure, regardless of the form, regardless of the spellings, आपने ना spelling को देखना है. You are not supposed to look at the criteria of form, neither anything else, but only the functioning criteria. That what is actually the function of that word. So when you look at a word and the function of that word in a particular context and a sentence, there you realize that whether it is a noun or a verb or an adjective or another adverb. So this was all about gerund. Now we are going to switch our discussion to infinitives. That what do we actually mean by an infinitive? Infinitives are frequently used in English language, and there have been innumerable controversies pertaining to this aspect, that we have some criteria to follow in order to constitute the concept of an infinitive. Now, what is an infinitive? Infinitive is actually 2 plus first form of verb. This is your infinitive. 2, preposition 2 plus first form of verb. For example, we say, let's simplify it, to go, to jump, to read. Whenever you look at this, whenever we come across a particular sentence where we see 2 plus first form of verb, it is actually an infinitive. Why we often say that we are using first form of verb with 2? The reason is that we always associate the first form of verb or attach a first form of verb with 2 because we are actually writing an infinitive. Now, there was a debate once that why shouldn't we split the infinitive? Split का मतलब कि हम infinitive को divide कर सकते हैं या नहीं कर सकते हैं. Splitting the infinitive का मतलब ये है कि क्या ये possible है कि जो 2 है साथ में हमारा जो फर्स्ट फॉर्म है, क्या इसके बीच में, इसके दरमियान में कोई और वर्ड आ सकता है या नहीं आ सकता? मतलब यहां पर जो मैंने लिखा है to go, तो क्या मैं ये लिख सकता हूं to boldly go? क्या ये पॉसिबल है कि मैं इंफिनिटिव को स्प्लिट करके उसमें एक और वर्ड इस्तेमाल करूं? यहां पर अब 2 डिबेट्स चलती हैं. One debate is regarding the traditional grammarians and the other the modern grammarians, जिनको हम कहते हैं prescriptivists and descriptivists. अब यहां पर ये जो 2 डिबेट्स हैं, अगर आप यहां पर देखें, हमारे पास 2 स्कूल ऑफ थॉट्स हैं. दोनों क्या कहते हैं? प्रिस्क्रिप्टिविस्ट का ये मानना है, दे बिलीव दैट इट शुड नॉट बी स्प्लिट. डिस्क्रिप्टिविस्ट का मानना है देखिए, अगर आप, if you look at the board, the prescriptivists, they believe that these type of forms in infinitives are not possible. They are not permissible. Why? The reason is that they believe, the traditional grammarians, that infinitive should be intact. It should not be divided, separated. While on the contrary, जो descriptivist का मानना है, they believe that you can split the infinitive, or the reality is that now in modern English, the infinitives can be split according to the situation, according to the sentence. It means that there is always a room for flexibility in grammar. But according to these people, prescriptivist school of thought, the traditional grammar that we still follow in letter and spirit, they believe that it should not be split. We should just follow the 2 preposition plus first form of verb. 2 preposition plus first form of verb. So all these different aspects need to be considered before discussing these different topics. तो यहाँ तक मैं आपको infinitive के बारे में जो मैंने बताया है वो ये है कि infinitive is just 2 plus first form of verb, but you can split the infinitive according to the situation. For example, my purpose was to read. My purpose was to loudly read. ये पॉसिबल नहीं है अकॉर्डिंग टू प्रिस्क्रिप्टिविस्ट, बट डिस्क्रिप्टिविस्ट मानते हैं कि नो यू कैन राइट इट, बट मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स वी फॉलो दिस क्राइटेरिया। हम प्रिस्क्रिप्टिविस्ट की बातों को मानते हैं। अगर आप ग्रामर की बुक्स को देखें, इफ यू लुक एट द बुक्स ऑफ ग्रामर, इफ यू लुक एट द बुक्स ऑफ अदर ग्रामरियंस, रेनन मार्टन हो गया या डोगर की जो किताब है वो हो गई, और इंडियन ऑथर्स की किताब, ऑल दीज बुक्स रेफर टू द सेम प्रिस्क्रिप्टिविस्ट, मैं इसके साथ लिख भी देता हूं, ट्रेडिशनल स्कूल ऑफ थॉट, ट्रेडिशनल ग्रामर। So we are following which grammar? We are following traditional grammar. So what is traditional grammar stating? It is stating that infinitive is to plus first form of verb. To plus first form of verb. This is your infinitive. So this was all about unit number 12, the blanket. We will discuss the next unit in the next session. Thank you.